Hopefully so. Okay, thank you so much for that amazing introduction, Anthony. Thanks also for the previous session. We found it really, really interesting, some really useful discussions there. Thank you also for the UK Nigeria Tech Hub for hosting us today. My name's Jessica Hope. I run Wimbart, which is an African tech-focused PR agency. We have been going for 7 years, but I've actually worked in the African tech space for 10 years. Prior to running Wimbart, I was head of global comms for Iroko, which was one of the, I guess, really, really early days technology companies that focus very much on fundraising, but also PR. And from Iroko, I've gone on to work with the likes of Andela, CC Hub, Flutterwave, Paystack, 54 Gene, Kobo 360, TLP Advisory, and I also do some mentoring with Google as well. So we've been working within the ecosystem for 7 years. There's a team of 20 of us. We're all based in London, but we have a lot of Nigerians working for Wimbart, and we work and travel back and forth between Nigeria and the UK. So we do have a really good understanding of how to navigate the UK-Nigeria ecosystem. So I think it's going to be a really fascinating panel discussion today. I would like all the other esteemed panelists to spend 1 minute maximum giving us your elevated pitch, please. Your name, where you work, and yeah, what you do, and your maybe also what you'd like to get from today's discussion as well. So I will start, please, with Jite.
Thanks so much, Jess. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone on the panel. I'm really excited to meet you all. My name is Onajite, and I'm currently leading the Google for Startups Accelerator program in Europe. Previously, so I've been at Google for the past 4 years now. Previously, I was the head of Google for Startups in SSA, running our accelerator programs and Black Founders Fund to support some of the amazing startups that we have coming out of countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, and so on. Prior to that, I was at the Tony Lumulu Foundation, where I led the $100 million TEF entrepreneurship program, supporting very early stage startups with grant funding and mentoring and training. So I'm really excited about, over the past 8 years, watching how startups in the ecosystem have grown, have begun to flourish. We have a couple of unicorns under our portfolio. So it's amazing to see the trajectory, and we're really just at the beginning. For me, for this conversation, I'm really trying to, understand, other perspectives or shared perspectives about how the ecosystem can grow, how the collaboration between Nigeria and the UK, we share so much history, how we can, bolster that to make sure that African startups are really driving the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maiwa from Future Africa.
Thanks, Jessica, and thanks. I mean, it's a pleasure to be with everyone here on this panel. And I mean, Odun, Jite, and Sam. I think Odun, we may have been on a panel together at some point in the past 1 year. So happy to be having a conversation with you again, and always really happy to hear your perspectives on things. So I'm a partner at a venture firm called Future Africa. I mean, may or may not be familiar to some of the folks on the call, but I guess to summarize what we're trying to achieve, essentially we are trying to help founders who are focused on Africa's biggest problems to turn those problems into global business opportunities, right? And this really stems from the background that you would observe if you take a look at the partners that we have at Future Africa. Right, the GP at Future Africa is somebody called E. I mean, before I continue, happy to learn that. I mean, it seems as if most people on this call, our paths have crossed at some point, right? So, for example, Jessica, I used to lead finance at Flutterwave between 2015 and when we did the Series B, and I think that was roughly the end of 2019. Right, so I know that definitely. I mean, if it was within that period, our paths definitely crossed, even though we've not had an actual conversation. So it's good to see that. I mean, as we continue on this journey to build the African ecosystem, we get the opportunity to keep on talking to each other, and I think this is what this is all about. right? So obviously, prior to Future Africa, I led finance at Flutterwave, and then I came into that space as an operator from investment banking, tax, and consulting. So in a room like this, because I'm the finance person, I would typically be the most boring person in the room, right? But I try to hold my own among folks like you. And so just it's really just my pleasure to hear everything you have to say today, guys.
Thank you, Maiwa. We are going to force you to be not a boring person. We know you've got it in you, right? It's not just about the money, although it is a bit as well. Okay, thank you very much. Sam?
Jessica, it's great to be on the same panel. It's been a while, and it's great to connect. And it's great to connect with you all as well. So my name is Sam Ajadi. I'm essentially I'm a co-founder of a community called UK Africa Tech Community, recently formed. And the view is that there's so much activity happening across the UK, Africa, the tech scene. And I'm based here in the UK, and I'm finding more and more people are either sort of moving here from Nigeria, vice versa, people returning home to do amazing work. The interest is growing, and so myself and my co-founders, three other co-founders, really came together and just said, why don't we put together, convene people with the view that we can create and help facilitate even more impact on the continent. And that's what we did. We had our first event in December, and it went really well. And we got some feedback from people in the ecosystem to understand what can we do together. Does this mean that we could come together and mentor people on the continent? Does this mean funding? Does this just mean like coming together and just do facilitation and ecosystem building? So yeah, we're still having that conversation, but yeah, it would be good to find out more about what people think also on this panel. In terms of my background, I sort of started. I was an analyst researcher for for several years, looking at the telecoms and technology space in Africa, and most recently I've sort of focused more on go-to-market strategies and helping companies in Africa looking to scale their solution. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Thank you very much, Sam. And our biggest boss, Odun, over to you, please.
Hi, Jessica. Hi, everyone. Really good to be here. Thank you for having me. My background, I am co-founder and partner at TLP Advisory. We are a venture law practice where we work with venture founders and their funders, so startups and investors. I'm also co-founder of a legal technology company called DIY Law. We've been doing this since 2014, so very early in the Nigerian startup space. We were the first startup focused law firm, and now we've evolved into a global venture law practice. Last year, we announced our entry into the UK, and we acquired a law firm in New York. And basically, the idea is, spreading our services to where we have a lot of African founders, where African founders are domiciling and expanding their operations too. My background before becoming a startup person was in investment banking. I worked into investment banks before I moved into the startup sector. And I'm really excited to be here. I think there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of value that can be created between both the UK and Nigerian tech ecosystem. And having conversations like this move us closer towards defining and talking about how that can be done. I'm very excited to be with everyone on this panel. I think I've interacted with almost everyone, probably except Sam, and I'm looking forward to getting to know Sam and interacting with everyone else in the future.
Thanks, Odun. Okay, so just broad context about the space we're operating in terms of, it's like Africa is not a continent. Nigeria is a massive country. The UK has millions of people as well, but it still seems to be a relatively small ecosystem. The fact is that we've all basically engaged previously. And I always say to people in the UK PR industry, it's not difficult for me to contact almost anyone on WhatsApp in African tech, right? probably 2 WhatsApps away from like almost anyone want to get to. So whilst the sector is growing, it's still relatively small. And a few people already in the introductions have talked about community, the ecosystem growth, which obviously really, really important to what we need to do in terms of building those like international channels between the UK and Nigeria. But also, you know, as Mayowa said, like it's not all about the money. Or did you say it was all about the money, Mayowa?
It's not.
But obviously money is really, really important as well to help grow and scale these companies. And I think interestingly, obviously in the UK, you have a lot of like Nigerian communities, not just in London, but in Bristol and in Manchester as well. So there's like that natural traditional kind of community building, which helps, I think, also between London, the UK and Nigeria as well. Obviously, we don't really have time zone issues, so that certainly helps facilitate business. And you know, there's a lot of money in London as well. So a lot of founders just find themselves coming through London just when they're on the sort of VC roadshow thing as well. So there's so many connections already. But I guess this discussion is going to look at how we build on that as well. I think one of the other areas that seems to have accelerated the growth of the community as well is Tech Nation. That seems to have changed how Nigerians can come and work. Oh no, Odun, she'll be back. How Nigerians can come and work and operate and build in the UK as well. So it'd be great to hear people's perspectives on that. Yeah, so I think let's start with discussing like what are people's sort of broad perspectives of working across the UK and Nigeria ecosystems. And I think Jite, maybe we'll start with you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so for me, it's, you know, personally, I'm still kind of figuring things out on for myself, because I recently just moved to the UK as well. Like I said, I now lead the European Accelerator for Google. So, but also having been in the UK for university and so on, everything that you said is right. I can definitely echo the fact that there's a very strong tie, very strong community of Nigerians in the UK. You can literally get to the airport. I mean, as basic as getting a taxi, half of the cab drivers hollering at you are all, you know, Nigerian, Ghanaian, or adjacent. So there's a natural pull and a natural like affiliation with the UK. It's also, you know, the proximity historically. I mean, we don't want to talk about, you know, way too far in the past, but there's so much in terms of our cultural identities that match up very, very closely with life here. So you come here and you almost immediately feel at home. We generally speak the same language. English is the first language for most people in Africa, at least officially, in Nigeria, sorry. And so it makes it easier to kind of break down those barriers and break down those gaps. Is very, very, Nigerians generally, when we go abroad, we like to find our communities and we're open to each other as well. It's very difficult for you to come to a country like England and not find another Nigerian to connect with, or not know someone who knows someone that can, you know, put you in. So the fact that we have that kind of culture of, you know, we want to, you know, take care of our own, and the UK is pretty much very, very much opening up to us even more now. People don't have to find corner ways to come in. They're literally saying, you know, the floodgates are open for you to come if you meet these criteria, which many of the startup ecosystem does. I think it's, you know, kind of a no-brainer why the UK is thriving with, you know, why Nigerians are thriving in the UK from the tech background. I've written a number of, you know, reference letters for startup founders, startup clients that are coming to the UK seeking, you know, additional funding, seeking to expand their networks. Why? Because there are Nigerians here already. Mm-hmm. There are Africans here already that are doing well, that are setting that example. And it also has a conducive environment. I wouldn't say it's easy to get funding, but there's an interest because there's so much, you know, there's so many parallels that investors can draw with, you know, Nigeria and with, you know, other West African countries as well.
Okay, that's interesting. And then, so Mayowa, then for your portfolio companies with Future Africa, then how does that sense of community and the connection between UK and Nigeria kind of play out with your portfolio companies? Do you guys consider it a benefit if one of the founders are based in the UK? Like, how do you view it?
Not necessarily. I mean, the way that we see it, I mean, I'll tell you a little story about Future Africa, which kind of plays into the original question of our experience here, right? We opened up Future Africa, with the mind core principle that we wanted to expand access into the venture space for Africans. Actually, there's a backstory to that, but eventually, when we came to the investing piece, or to the conclusion that investment will be a major piece of our mandate at Future Africa, I think we figured out that one of the best ways to approach it was to expand access into the space for Africans, and so we began to build our platform with that mindset, right? And to our surprise, when we were taking a look at our data, we saw that we were actually fulfilling the purpose of expanding this access, because we find that a ton of Africans who live in Africa, and obviously a large part of that in Nigeria, have the willingness to pour back some of what they've learned, some of their expertise, beyond their capital, into the ecosystem. And we figured out that that was important. But when I'm talking about Future Africa, I'll be able to tell you why that has been such a big factor. But the idea was, beyond the African access, we also saw the floodgates open for people who were diasporans, a very large chunk of them out of the UK. So there was this very huge UK representation on our platform with respect to who wants to invest and contribute to the ecosystem. And by the way, like a very big chunk of that investment group as well is people who have founded companies that are facing Africa and trying to turn the big problems that we have there into global business opportunities. So the reason I'm setting that context is that it even goes beyond founders and portfolio companies. It's really people who want to contribute something and who are finding their way to navigate these two closely linked ecosystems, and taking the best of what they have and pouring it into their efforts to build on the African continent. So you would see portfolio companies who are based out of here. Being based out of here isn't really, we don't consider it to be a significant benefit or disadvantage anyhow. We see that we're building an ecosystem that relies on an expanding network. And the reason that this comes into play is because Future Africa is really formed on the premise of community. Now, why is that? It's that way because all the partners at Future Africa have been operators at some point, right? You guys probably know E, you know myself. We have another partner called Mia, we have another partner called Caleb, who are really, really interesting and well experienced folks building out of the continent. And the reason that's so important is building something out of Nigeria is very, very different from building out of the Valley or even building out of UK. Because and I would give one major reason for that. It will be because of the market structures. Now, the market structures in the Valley, for example, there's still a lot of variance and variability, but there's also a high degree of predictability when you put in, before your input. So you put in a certain amount of capital, you have enough data to give you a good sense of what's expected as outcomes, right? In Africa, it's very, very different, because despite the fact that you assume you may be operating under the same conditions, you would take, if you listen to the last panel, somebody blatantly said you can't copy and paste models. And it's not just models for building companies, it's also models for investing in companies as well. And so you find, the smart money isn't throwing money at the problem and just kind of hoping that it works out, right, and they get a return. What we found, building companies like Flutterwave, the reason why we had to connect with folks like you and even Odun, because I remember, we spoke probably in passing on a couple of issues relating to legal, is that, so many things, there's so many variables to surviving as a builder in Africa. There's so many things that can kill your company. You wake up one day and there's a press release from the CBN saying all your accounts are shut. You had no view of this 2 hours before, and you kind of woke up to the news. And as a CEO, you're seeing news about your company online that you had no prior knowledge of. And these things happen on a daily basis, right? And what we found out being involved in building these really interesting businesses out of Africa, within our partnership, he co-founded Andela. He also co-founded Flutterwave. I led finance at Flutterwave for 3.5 years, right from the first check into the company, right? And some of the things we observed building these interesting things out of Africa are that, hey, you really, really need your community, right? And so before that news article comes out or before that press release goes out, you get somebody who's able to call you and say, hey, here's what I'm saying. This is probably a misunderstanding. Can you guys put together a presentation? Come here, let's have this conversation, and then get deeper integrated into the extraneous factors that are influencing your success beyond your company's four walls. Right. So you now see how important a community is. And we found out that building or getting involved in any great venture out of Africa, it was actually very, very important for that community to be galvanized in a structural and sensible manner that incentivized everybody to participate.
Okay,
Right.
that's really interesting. That's a really interesting point, actually. And I think that opens like the floor maybe to Odun, because Odun, you obviously have been working with startups from early days and talking about business building, structure, helping them with the legal side of things, but also Maya talked about obviously Flutterwave, governance, regulation are really important as well. How have you managed to kind of navigate the two in terms of business building in Africa and then making that move and helping companies also kind of navigate the sort of different business practices and regulations and legal systems between Nigeria and the UK?
Sure. Thanks. So, the two ecosystems are actually almost like night and day when you come up from a regulatory perspective. So you come from a Nigerian ecosystem where not all the laws are readily available. So, some of these laws exist. You really can't, not everyone knows where to find them, unlike the UK where you just go to uk.gov and everything is written there, right? So there's one about where the laws are, what the regulatory requirements are. The information is available in the UK as against in Nigeria. Now, on the other side, in Nigeria, compliance is usually on a, need basis. Unlike the UK, where you don't get compliant, when you don't comply, you get punished immediately. So you need to be proactive in all of this. So one of the things like we tell our clients that are trying to navigate both ecosystems, it is not a waste of money to get professionals when you get into the UK. Get your professional advisors, get your professional legal advisors, get your professional accountancy and tax advisors. You don't want to default. You don't want the HMRC coming after you. It could ruin your business. And if you're looking to raise money, you also want to be in good standing. There are benefits and perks that come from that you can get being a startup here. And when you're not compliant with your tax filings, where you're not in good standings, you really can take advantage of this. So, coming from an ecosystem where you can't really find information and where you have to go to the office of, you have to go to the tax advisor's office every time to be able to pay your taxes, and come to a place where you can do it easily online, you really have no excuse not to be compliant here. In terms of, even looking at starting from the entity you're choosing, why are you choosing that entity? Does it actually work for you? The fact that you have a certain type of entity in Nigeria does not mean that exact same entity is what you need here in the UK. So, it's on a case-by-case basis. And there are different reasons why Nigerian founders set up in the UK. So some set up in the UK because they're expanding into the UK. And then, okay, we're looking at a limited liability company. Sometimes it's just so that you want to accept money. It's to be able to open a bank account because there are restrictions in Nigeria. So what kind of entity is optimal since you're likely going to be a non-resident company, you're not operational in the UK. So what makes sense from you from a tax perspective, from a regulatory perspective? So these are the kind of things we try to navigate. Are you going to be doing some research? In which case you can get some waivers, some tax waivers if you're here. So I think the first thing is get advisors. Don't try to do guesswork. When you do the guesswork, it's going to put you in a lot of trouble. And then you're also not maximizing opportunities that can potentially actually help your business. So get advisors, get information. Ignorance is not an excuse, but we've seen that people are actually, it is different, but people are doing it successfully. Nigerians are transiting successfully, able to build in both climates and build good businesses, whether it's in Nigeria or whether it's in the UK.
Okay, thanks, Odun. And then I guess, Sam, it'll be interesting to hear from your perspective then, what are the kind of challenges, but also the positives of so many founders these days kind of shuttling and traveling between the two ecosystems in terms of how they build their businesses, how they engage with investors, how they engage with talent. What are the kind of tech companies that you're working with saying about that?
So I think the sort of the opportunities for sure. I think we've sort of mentioned it on this panel around being able to access funding in the UK, and being able to receive payments. That's a big one. I've found that founders generally, some of the challenges that come up would be around there's nothing as being able to do things on ground in Nigeria, in Africa more generally. And so being able to sort of travel back and forth isn't always ideal in that sense. I think we've seen there's certainly the opportunities across across UK and Africa, and the people taking opportunity, really maximizing those opportunities. What we have found though in terms of challenges is making, as we've gone digital over the last few years with COVID happening, we're seeing more and more people really move back and forth. The UK has a strong demand for tech, for tech experts and people within the tech sector. If you look back 20 years ago, my mom moved to the UK. She was a nurse. There was huge demand for nurses. I think what we're seeing right now with technology is that technology is that thing that through things like the Tech Nation visa, the UK has been able to attract many more talent and it's beyond founders, also software developers, people that are really good, the brightest, the best in their fields. The UK has done a great job of attracting that globally. And I think over time, we would see people bridging some of these, the challenges and addressing some of the challenges around payments, which we're seeing things, companies like Florida were doing an amazing job, and others as well. But yeah, it's increasingly, I'll just finish up with talent. We're seeing challenges around talent. I know many people in the UK here that they want to do something back home. They're experts in their field. They don't want to make that leap. They're not ready to make that leap in terms of going home, but they're looking for ways to support their countries back home. They support the continent. And yeah, that's one opportunity that could be explored in terms of bridging that. What could we do in terms of giving these people access to be able to mentor experts and mentor people back home, whilst, yeah, opportunities as well that they could tap into back home. I think that's something that comes up.
So that's an interesting discussion point there in terms of the mentoring side of things. And I think especially when it comes to, say, women in tech broadly, there's the kind of narrative that women in tech tend to be offered lots of mentoring, but sooner or later, like, they just need someone to cut them a check. And there's this massive disparity in terms of investing in women, but just continuing to like offer mentoring, kind of more the sort of soft skills rather than the actual like, here's money to go and build, here's money to go and scale, here's money that says we know that you can do it and you can build a business. So I think, Jite, it'd be really interesting to hear from you what can be done in terms of looking at the talent side of things, but also what's that sort of balance between mentorship, funding, and talent.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. So just to clarify, are you talking about specifically for women or in general?
Not just women. It just made me think about the mentorship because there's so much discussion about women. If you have something salient to say, that would be great. But just obviously you've done so much work with startups, with mentorship, but obviously then there's the funding side of things as well. Like, what's the balance just in general between the sort of UK Nigeria tech ecosystem?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, every startup company is different, right? They're all at different stages. Even if they're in the same field, even if they're trying to create the exact same solution, they're going to do it in different ways. They're going to take different steps to get from point A to point B. And so I think there's no one size fits all approach for when it comes to mentorship. When is the right time to raise funding? Take a company like Piggyvest, for example. we don't necessarily hear, big announcements about how much funding they've raised, Series B, Series C, Series D, but they're profitable, they're making great revenue, they're doing amazing work, and they're also women co-led, which is, an important point to state. And then you have other companies like Flutterwave that just, got to $3 billion status. They're both solving amazing things, around, finance, around one is payments, one is investing. They're targeting like that kind of youth market as well. But they have very, very different trajectories. Are you going to say, Flutterwave doesn't need mentorship because they're having, they have a lot of money? They might need mentorship to get them, used to the fact that they're expanding very, very quickly. They need the right kind of advice or the right kind of support to be able to manage that change and that sporadic growth really, really well. Likewise, are you going to say that PEVS doesn't need any funding or doesn't need any money at all? So I think it's important for us to kind of look at, what this company is trying to do, where where they may be experiencing some gaps, and, identifying, at this stage, they need X, Y, or Z. So it's going to be a real mix of, different things. I would say personally from, looking at the startups that I've worked with in the past, money is the first thing that comes out, from their minds. Everybody wants that check, right? To a large extent, people are kind of chasing those, those announcements. They're very, very encouraging, very inspiring, very exciting, but sometimes that's not enough. That's not really the crux of the matter. Mentorship as well. Sometimes you just don't have the right advice. You're not getting the right, you're not being told the right thing, or you're being told things that are conflicting, and it gets confusing. Which is why, our program, Go for Startups Accelerator, we try to bring the best minds together, but we also take the approach of, don't necessarily tell the startup what to do, kind of guide them, encourage them, and let them figure it out for themselves. Give them examples of, things that have been successful, things that have failed. Give them examples that pertain to their industry, but still let them take the lead, because ultimately they're the ones that are responsible for their own growth. You can't spoon feed a company to be successful, right? And then in terms of finance, open the doors for them to have, a varied choice for investment opportunities. You don't want to be in a situation where, for example, like women founders, they find it difficult to raise funding. They go to only, grant sources and so on, and that's where they're successful. When it comes to, getting the big checks, they're getting told no, and only a few people are even interested or opening doors to speak to them. Yes, it sounds, it's really, really sexy now. Oh, women led this, women led that. Women's Day was just a few days ago. But how many of those, big engagements or pink banners or whatever are actually being translated into real checks? Women are kind of being backed into a corner where they're having to accept money on really shitty terms, because everyone, likes to talk and likes to put up those banners, but isn't actually, genuinely doing the work. So breaking some of those barriers, giving startups more choice, putting the power back in the startups' hands to be able to, say, no, what, these terms don't necessarily meet, the needs of my company right now, or the vision of the VC doesn't necessarily align. They feel comfortable saying no, because some of them are also in a position where they're taking money out of desperation or out of lack of better alternatives. Mentorship also comes in to tell you, you don't always have to take that check, or this isn't the right time to take that check, or just because you're going to be featured on TechCrunch doesn't mean raising money now is the right decision. So I think the balance is really, is really, really important as well. As for the UK ecosystem, there's a lot of pounds flowing into Africa now, which is great. But at the same time, I think what I would just say is make sure that you're taking money for the right reasons, not just because you want to, up your valuation or whatever. And also, I think I'll stop there. I've said a lot of different things, but I think I'll let someone else, talk a little bit more about that as well.
Well, Odin and I have been nodding very vigorously, because I think we're both fully in agreement and completely understand the issues that you've identified there. So Maya, let's move then on to Jite mentioned the sort of VC and taking investment and so forth. So if founders and investors or operators as well are planning to start working across the ecosystems in general, what are the first steps that they should take? So from a VC perspective, an investor perspective, what are you looking for when it comes to them tapping into different networks and communities, and also what are the sort of networks and communities that Future Africa, for example, would provide?
So quick one there, just because I'm conscious of time. I think the first thing I'll do is quickly lean into what Odun said about getting professional guidance on specific matters around legal structures, and tax, right? You definitely want to do that because, it's very unlikely that you're an operational entity here. And so for everything for the touch points that you need to secure here around fundraising, legal status and etc. You definitely want to get professional help. So also obviously reach out to Odun, right? Second thing is to find anchors, and I'll just kind of relate to you how Future Africa has. Thinking of us even as a startup, right? Not as an investor now. Coming into the UK, we've been relatively new, and some of the things that have really helped us to supercharge our movement here is that we found really, really interesting anchors in the private and public sector. The biggest investor in Future Africa's GP is a UK VC, one of the biggest VCs out of the UK, called Local Globe, right? And so a huge anchor there in the private sector. We also found public sector anchors that we have a tremendous amount of alignment with in terms of their mandates in Nigeria specifically, right? Second thing, or rather, third thing here is to seek to add value to each of the anchors that you find. Seek to add value to everybody, but if you do find anchors, be as beneficial as you can towards fulfilling their own mandate as well, right? And going to the more human stuff, find some family-oriented communities to assist with dealing with like culture and adaptation issues. And it's a very long conversation here around how family, especially with folks with families or founders kind of moving their families who are probably used to a different living situation in Africa around the ability to afford childcare and things like that. Those are, they're human things, but they are very, very significant in the scheme of, hitting the ground running in the UK community as well, right? And obviously communities like this forum that we're on are very, very useful because getting the perspectives of your colleagues and in general, Future Africa just values communities a lot because for everything that we've built that is profound out of the continent, it's been as a result of talking to people who are willing and invested in helping out.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. And then, so again, we're talking about kind of communities and leaning in on communities as well.
Yes.
So Odun, for example, I'm guessing that a vast majority of your work comes from the broader community in terms of everyone's kind of very plugged in as well. And they're kind of taking broader advice that I'm sure VCs will also give them when they've raised some money, that you need kind of professional services to make sure that you're compliant and so forth. So you've seen growth over 3 years, 4 years, like massive growth. You've expanded to the UK. How much more growth do you expect to see over the next, say, 2 years? And the same with Wimbart, right? We have grown alongside with the African tech space as well. We are service providers. What can we expect? Like, how many more people do we have to hire in order to keep up with the African tech space and primarily the Nigerian tech space?
I'm really excited. That's a good question. I see a lot of growth. I see a lot of opportunities in the Nigerian ecosystem. There's still a lot of problems that need to be solved. And, the tech, even the explosion of the tech talent, not necessarily founders as well. There's just so much encouragement and there's so much, despite the obstacles, in spite of the obstacles, Nigerian founders are rising above what they have to go through to build really great companies that are able to expand to other parts on the continent and outside of the continent. And obviously for service providers like us, when you see a lot of growth, when the startups are growing, then obviously that's growth for us. So if you say, where do I see us growing in the next couple of years? There's just so much space. We just want to really lean into this UK community as well, support more founders here, both founders from Africa that are moving here and even UK founders that are looking to do business in Africa. We're looking to lean in and support them some more, help them navigate both ecosystems and, just generally grow with where the African founders are growing into, expanding to the markets that they're growing into. Where at this time in Nigeria, there's a lot of migration, there's a lot of moving into other places. So where Nigerians go, will find us there.
And then, so Sam, what can the UK Africa tech community do to support Nigerians, the Nigerian tech community, and vice versa? Actually, what more can be done to kind of build that community and kind of I don't know, lead to like real impact?
Yeah, I think structuring, there's so many people working here in the UK, working for UK companies, that they're affiliated to Africa, maybe like myself, for instance, born in Nigeria, that they're thinking of ways to do more back home. I think one thing that we're looking to do, within the UK Africa Tech community, is find ways to structure that so the people that are looking to support, actually, the ideal case would be having diasporans that are working for African companies, skilled diasporans that want to do more back home, and so we're looking for ways to facilitate that. One of the conversations we had yesterday is that just picture having maybe 20%, 30% of folks that are in Nigeria that are working with the Nigerian ecosystem, that are based in the UK, if they were in a tech hub in London, co-located in the same space, there's discounts available for membership, and people are able to meet and partner and build relationships. Those are the kind of things that we could do to further facilitate partnership.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've gone over because we had lots to talk about, but thank you so much. I think it's like, basically we know that there's going to be continued growth. We're going to continue investing our time and our energy in building our community. We're going to go and tap up Future Africa for investment, and other VCs as well, and make sure that we take money responsibly from VCs and on our own terms as well. Thank you very much to Anthony for hosting us. Thank you for Jite, Maiwa, Odun, and Sam for your time today, and I hope the rest of the summit goes really well. Thank you very much.